Hi, I'm Paul Jermain, and welcome to another session of Smart Boating. As you know, if you watched the show before, we cover a variety of topics from man overboard to insurance. And the primary idea is to give you some information that will allow you to make smarter decisions and have more fun in the water. But every now and then we take a little side trip down to a place where I think you might find interesting, and that's the case today. We're at the Antique Boat Museum in Clayton, New York, and we're joined by the director, Rebecca Hopfinger, who's going to tell us a little about the museum. Rebecca?
Hi, Paul. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Very neat museum here, lots and lots of boats. Can you tell us a little bit about the background of the museum, how it got started and why, and what goes on here today?
Sure. So the museum is actually celebrating its 50th birthday as a museum this year, and it really started by a group of enthusiastic boat owners. Starting out as a boat show, someone wanting to sort of show off their new restoration, and evolving into a little auxiliary, which was a branch from our local museum here in town. And we've developed now into this world-class nautical museum that you see today.
Right. And you've got acres of facilities, right?
And fortunately, we're right on the waterfront. So we have a beautiful facility and campus that we're able to showcase all of these boats.
And are there certain key events or exhibits that happen at any particular time of the year?
We have exhibits throughout the summer season, so we're open mid-May through mid-October. And we have one of the oldest continuous running boat shows in the States.
Wow.
Yeah, first weekend in August.
Okay, all right, I'll make a note of that. And I'm gonna get going because there's a lot of neat boats here to shoot, so I want to record those and then do some explanations with one of your experts. Yes. Well, Bo, with your extensive background in antique and classic boat restoration, this boat here must be a significant one, right?
Well, it is, because this is built by Hutchinson in the Thousand Islands, which is just down the river from the Antique Boat Museum. And this boat was one of the very first boats. I think it led the parade on the very first antique boat show.
Was that 1965?
65. So you realize how long ago that was. And it really helped kindle the whole ambition to get a museum going and have antique boat shows and the whole thing.
Hutchinson, they were made almost locally to where the museum is today. The museum's in Clayton. They are in Alexandria Bay, right?
Correct. They're just down the river, and Alex Bay was the larger of the two towns, and they had several boat building, companies there. Hutchinson was the largest. And
now this is a long 4-deck model.
Yes, long deck. So seating is all in the back, and the motor's up in the front. Displacement launch. So this design was designed to go through the water and not go on top of it.
Very smooth riding.
Very
smooth riding.
They rolled a little bit with the waves, but they sliced through. And this is a very typical layout. Driver on the left, 2 seats forward, perhaps 2 jump seats right behind those. An open area and a 3rd seating in the back. So yeah, Idle Oaks was an early boat for the museum.
Right. Interesting transom. This is an interesting boat, a 1909 31-foot Ellie Fry and Company. This is again a New York boat.
Right.
I think this was made in reaction to American Powerboat Association rules, right?
Well, this was built to race.
Yes.
Just over 3.5 feet long, 31 feet long, or excuse me, wide, and then 31 feet long. Now the Fry Company, Ellie Fry, was built, or the company was right on the museum grounds.
Really?
The museum was the Fry Boat Building Company. So this is pretty special to the museum in that it was built on their ground.
Wow.
And they used Spanish cedar decks and typical cedar sides.
Now they wanted light construction of this because this was a race boat, right?
This was meant to go fast. Yes. And long and skinny was the way to go fast in the displacement era. And this epitomized extra long and skinny.
Now cedar planking in this boat as opposed to some of the mahogany we've seen in other boats?
Right. Well, this boat was probably built using local materials and local woods.
Right, okay.
So, local oak framing and local cedar planking, and then the big money was importing some mahogany or Spanish cedar for the decks.
I see.
But this boat could be used for pleasure because you can see it's plenty of room to seat. maybe, what, 3 passengers, 1, 2, 3.
Right, right.
I've seen this boat run,
Yeah.
and it's beautiful to watch.
Is
it
it
runs
really?
very flat.
Yeah.
And if we got a good shot of the transom, you would see it's wide in the back, which
I
is
see.
helping give it lift from the rear end.
Now here's an interesting boat. It's built by the Albany Boat Company, 32 foot, built in 1928. I guess these guys got in the business in early 1900s and got into the boat part of the business about 1915, 1916.
Right. Well, Albany was a very, I think of Albany as John Hacker's first adventure in the boat business.
Oh, right, yeah.
They were built in the Hudson Valley area of New York. Typically, they built huge boats. Now, this is 32 feet, but this was by no means a large Albany.
Oh,
They
was it?
built
Okay.
40, 44,
All right.
48-foot launches.
It has that feel to it. It has a big boat feel to it.
Yeah, well, it's,
Yes.
trust me, 32 was still a big boat.
Yes, right.
But this was John Hacker, and he was experimenting with hard shine runabouts.
Oh, okay.
So, and Albany was really the first endeavor to take on hard shine. And it proved out to be a better hull form.
Okay,
So,
all right.
you know, this was a pretty important boat.
This was breaking ground back
And
then.
That's right. I mean, this developing of the speedboat, quote, this was pioneering work. But very large, and you can see, you know, wraparound bucket seats were pretty unusual
It
for the
does
day.
look
but
unusual, yeah.
Yeah, but big wood windshields, I mean, I don't think they're the most beautiful, but they developed the metal ones later on after that. And a walkway on top of the hatch cover.
Oh, okay.
That's material that you could walk on to the third seat.
Well, this is an interesting boat here. This is a 36 foot, built in 1904 by the Charles L. Seabury Company in Moiki. This was prior to the merger with the other company to make Consolidated, right?
Right. This is, I mean, this is a real early powerboat.
Yeah.
1904. I mean,
1904.
engines, you know, gasoline engines were in their infancy, basically.
Yeah.
And this was brought to the Thousand Islands, and it had to be used for racing.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
this was a gift, right? This was a gift of one fellow to his
daughter, I
yeah,
believe.
14th birthday.
Yeah, imagine a boat like that for a 14th birthday present. But this boat got used for racing.
Right, this is a race boat, right?
On the Thousand Islands,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was a real, you know, I won't call it camaraderie, but a real competitive racing in the Thousand Islands back in those days.
And you can see that shape of that era, long and thin and rounded to a certain extent.
And very high crown on the deck.
Yes.
And that was for a reason, because the motors were pretty darn big.
Oh, they were.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I'm not sure what it had new, but it would have been plenty, and I think they put 150 horsepower in this in the mid-teens.
Yeah, that's a
So-
lot. That's
And
a
this
lot.
boat has really not been restored. It's in original condition.
Yeah, that's another benefit of when you go to a museum like this, you see these things that you just wouldn't see
Right.
anyplace else.
Right. It's really great when you can look at original workmanship in these old boats.
Right. It's been restored, not even restored, really.
It's been
really
maintained.
Maintained.
Yeah,
Maintained is a better
yeah.
way to put it. Yeah. Yeah.
So, a great boat.
A lot of spice in a boat like that. Of course, 30 feet. Now this is a neat boat. It's a 1921 Hutchinson, a 36-foot Red Cloud. This looks like a sedan model. Was this originally a sedan model, or?
This boat was actually an open boat built by
Okay.
the Hutchinson Company. And then somewhere in the late 20s, it got the sedan put on it.
It did.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. There was a market for an enclosed boat. If you lived on an island, your chauffeur could get wet up in the front, and he didn't get covered, but the guests and company could jump in underneath the canopy top. And in this boat, you could roll the windows up and close it off and entertain in it while you were going to your island house.
Now this is a long deck to launch, I guess, right?
Well, you know, the driver's station is forward.
Yes.
So this would be a chauffeur, what they call a chauffeured launch.
Yeah. Okay.
So your chauffeur would be up in the front and guests in the back.
and a rounded bottom on this.
This is
as
a round
opposed to a
chine,
hard
right?
chine.
And this is very typical of Hutchinson, in that it's a round bilged boat
Okay.
with a spray rail put onto it.
Oh, I see. Right. Right. And here's a
Yeah, and here's the
image of the interior.
Yep. Yep, this is where guests and company would hang out while they're
that would
doing
be
a trip.
what capacity for, say, 5 or 6 people?
At least, yeah, because realize this is 36 feet long.
Yeah, yeah, there's not a lot of room and something like that.
And there may have been a canopy over the rear section at one point in this
Right.
boat's career, so you could put 10 people under cover.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is a really interesting boat here. This was built by Stanley Boat Works. It's a 26-foot, built in 1926, and again, it looks like it has a racing heritage to it.
Well, this boat was raced, raced heavily, frankly. It had a Hispano Suiza 240 or 50 horsepower motor in it when it was new.
Yeah, very unusual. I haven't heard of that.
Well, you know, Stanley was a single individual that built some boats.
Okay.
Rumor is maybe he built a dozen or so boats, but he had a great eye. He used some of Hackercraft's plans.
I see.
This boat, to my eye, is beautiful from every corner.
Yeah. Now, would the museum restore something like this, or would it have higher value to put it together, keep it in its raw form?
Well, we've urged the museum not to restore this boat.
You have?
Yeah. It's pure, it's original. At some point, it's, you know, the builders, or today's builders, need to see stuff in its original form, and here's a great example.
It is. Here's some images of the cockpit there.
Yeah.
And it's so your suggestion, a boat like this, and something the museum would get again to put the pieces back together again, but not try to make it new, if you will.
Put it together and preserve it. Just don't try to restore it, because every time something gets restored, a little bit gets lost.
In terms of the originality and the authenticity.
Yeah. And in the case of this boat, I mean, just to have it intact, as intact as it is really a great museum piece.
Yeah.
It would be like an unrestored painting in a museum. I mean, if it's a Rembrandt, don't touch it.
No. That's a very interesting boat. How about this one? This is a 40-foot Hutchinson Sedan Commuter, 1930.
Yeah. Now this is a few years after the last Hutchinson we just looked at. So, but along the same lines, this would be a chauffeured limousine launch.
Okay. Right.
But round bottom still, and round bottom that's late for Hutchinson building round bottom.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, yeah. But the big spray rail, which Hutchinson was known for.
Oh yeah.
Now this is 40 feet.
Yes.
So this is a really large boat.
That's a big boat. Yeah.
Yeah, and it says something to the Hutchinson company as a builder, because they were capable of building whatever somebody came through their door and wanted.
Yeah. Did you see any hacker influence in the Hutchinsons, in terms of the lines of the boats and that sort of thing?
Certainly later on, you start to see, and I'm pretty sure that, well, there's stories that the Hutchinson boys went across the islands and actually lofted a hacker that was in a boathouse one winter and, you know, stole the plans.
Well, that's just a legend, right?
Yeah,
We don't know
sort of
if that
stole
to
the
be true or
plans.
not. Yeah.
But they ended up building a lot of hard shine runabout limousines. And you can see this one has the closing doors and roll-up windows.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
this one's complete.
Yeah.
That's an unusual boat right there, huh?
Yeah, the museum actually has 2 of them.
That's amazing.
It is.
What a nice boat to go cruise the islands in. Here's a very different boat. They have quite a collection at the museum, and this is a 1958 Chris Craft. They call it Silver Arrow, a 19-foot Silver Arrow. And what I think is unusual about this is it looks like a straight fiberglass boat, right?
Well, it does. It's skinned with fiberglass.
Yes, but it's not.
It's a planked boat underneath. You can see the planks on the side. Of course, when it was new, you probably wouldn't be able to pick out the plank lines.
Right.
But this was...
very stylish, very futuristic feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I think of this as the George Jetson era coming onto the boat world. But Chris Craft had experimented with fiberglass with the Cobra series.
Oh, right.
And that was 1955.
Just pieces of the boat they made out of fiberglass.
Yeah, and then here we are with their first real endeavor of, you know, covering the entire boat with fiberglass.
And what they were trying to come up with a more durable finish, or what?
Well,
or just kind of experimenting with the technology.
I think that the technology was coming, and we knew that, you know, fiberglass was going to make its appearance, and Chris Craft was in the experimental mode.
I think it's a pretty boat. It looks almost like it's got this bull nose or the Roman nose.
Yeah, I mean that's what we call the bull nose.
The bull nose.
Yeah.
And here we can see here, right, the planking underneath, so the
Right.
wood
They've done
and
a
the fiberglass.
They've done a cutaway, so
Yeah.
you can see the construction on this boat.
Yeah, so it definitely is a wood
Yep.
boat with the fiberglass skin to it.
Yeah, but a pioneering effort, you know, by Chris Craft to
Yeah.
get into the fiberglass boat market.
Yeah, this again, it's just such a rare boat. I mean, I've
And
never seen
you know,
one
a
like this
nice
before.
job, all styled and streamlined.
Yes, yes, very stylish. Yeah. So probably taking some cues off the automotive industry in those days.
Right. I hope you'll see the
50
fins,
Yeah,
because
there's some
the
fins in the back here.
fins
Yeah.
were big in the 50s, and by gosh, there they are on
Put
the
them
boat.
on the boat too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's quite a fin there. That's an old Cadillac.
Yeah.
Well, this is another interesting boat. It's a little earlier. This is a 1948 Gar form runabout, about almost 17 foot, 16.8.
Right.
And again, this is the result of Garwood Jr. and his father
Right.
working together to see what could be done to make a lightweight, economical, good-performing boat. Right.
And this is a experimental type boat.
Yes.
Of using composites and fiberglass. So, and that's why Chris Craft kind of was forced to go into the glass world, because a boat like this coming out of Garwood, the Garform
Right.
company, this was a fiber boat. This was not wood at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you could see the future is here. And
Well, it was interesting too because of the factory was set up to produce these boats in the late 40s, about 1947 in Oklahoma. So these guys were really on the leading edge of
Right.
the fiberglass
Right.
era.
This was cutting edge stuff, and they were forcing the market to start to adapt to fiber.
Now, do you think some of these lines came off some of their wooden boats? They were thinking, okay, these lines are nice and wood, and we'll
Well,
put them in fiberglass?
A little bit of this, but this was really a departure for Garwood.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, this was a real step into the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you can see, I mean, there's a traditional dash panel.
Right, that's
Right,
coming from
so-
their experience,
Right,
right?
and they did use a little bit of the wood inside, but the hull itself was a composite hull.
Yeah, epoxy resin, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a real
An engine in the back, so again,
a trendsetter. This is another very interesting boat. This is a Link folding rowboat built in 1946. Now Link, Edward Link, was responsible for creating a flight simulator to train pilots in the war, right?
well, the museum has a Link trainer, one
they do.
of their planes. And it works on the hydrofoil process, and if you work the controls in the cockpit,
Yes.
which was aircraft-like,
Yes.
the boat or the machine would go up and down in the water, so
Yeah.
you could bank left, bank right.
Okay.
But
So he was an inventor.
right, he was creative.
And then my understanding is that he focused initially on canoes. What they were trying to do is make them so they could be taken apart, made portable, and then basically portage between body of water and body of water. And this is the successor to that, the rowboat.
Well, there was quite a trend in the, let's say, late 40s to make folding kayaks in boats that would come apart and could be shipped easily. You could ship it to a destination and then show up, assemble it, and go paddling or
Right.
traveling.
Right.
And this isn't a good example of someone that experimented and came up with a new idea.
Right. So this is coming in on some of the joints, if you will.
Yeah.
This is an interesting boat here. It's what they call a dippy, I think. They were built between 1914 and 1958. Lapstrake hulls, and the interesting thing was the mobility of the shaft and the rudder and the propeller system, right?
Right. I mean, this was a motorized canoe in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But the problem with hitting shallow water in a canoe that had a propeller would be you'd damage the prop.
Right.
So the disappearing propeller company started, and you could actually lift the propeller and the shaft up into a housing that was inside the boat.
Okay.
So you could go in 3 inches of water or 4 inches of water and not damage anything.
Nice. Very nice.
So in dippies, they're Canadian.
Oh, they are?
Yeah, yeah, and there's a dippy club, and I mean, people are very excited about their dippies.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, they generally had 1 or 1.5 horsepower single-cylinder motors.
Oh, they do?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
That's the motor we're looking at there
Yeah,
now.
we're looking underneath the seat. And you know, Dippy's advertising, they showed a Dippy going down the lake with something like 13 or 15 people in it.
Oh.
So they were really quite seaworthy.
Quite a carrying capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were real popular in, you know, shallow water lakes.
Yeah, that makes sense. And here we can see the running gear from the other angle, and so this whole
Right.
assembly would move up into...
And you can see the pivoting point where you could lift the whole prop
Yes.
right up.
Yes.
And the cutaway in the hull, it could go right up into the hull.
It's almost like a centerboard on a sailboat.
Right.
Yeah. Well, here's an interesting, this is another consolidated launch, 30-foot, 1895. So this is well over 100 years old.
This is very early.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is another thing you would never see outside a museum. This is just too rare.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And at that era, it probably was not gasoline powered.
Right.
It might
Probably
have
the
been
naphtha, maybe.
Naphtha or steam power.
Yeah.
And certainly by that era, the electric motors with battery powers had been used successfully in boats, so it could have even been an electric drive.
Okay. All right. So this would have been the sort of thing that someone within the Thousand Island region might have used to get back and forth to their camp or their house or whatever.
I mean, it was very typical in the Thousand Islands. And even today, the island, people want to live on the islands.
Yes, of
That's the more valuable properties are in the islands.
Sure.
Which necessitated boats like this to transport everything that went to the island.
Yeah, it's got a big combing here, I noticed. So getting some heavy water, that's going to keep some of that out of there.
Yeah, good. I mean, this is a large boat for that era.
That is, yeah, 30 feet. That's
right, right, and very
substantial boat.
very normal. And you know, oddly enough, if you look at the top of the joint blocks there, those are for oarlocks. So
if your propulsion goes out,
if your propulsion quit,
you can row home.
Could row home.
That's a big
Right.
boat to row.
Most boats from that era have those oarlocks.
Oh, they do. Okay. All right. Now this is a popular Chris Craft double cockpit rumboat made in 1927.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm going to disagree there because the upsweep Chris Craft was developed in 1930.
Okay.
So, and this is probably the 24-foot Chris Craft.
All right.
The little brother to the most popular, which was the big 26-foot.
All right.
These were a fairly stylized Chris Craft. One of my favorites, frankly.
Yeah.
It's a nice size, 24 feet. It was just a little shorter, and for the smaller lakes, you could get them into docks and boathouses where the 26 might have been too big.
Yeah, it's interesting how the deck sweeps up there in front of the windshield.
And that was Bill McCarrer, who was the stylist for Chris Craft, came to them and developed that whole lineup for them.
Really? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, but very nice boats. I've seen the lines drawings for both the 24s and the 26s.
Yeah.
And Chris Craft was pretty clever in that the dimensions are the same. They just shortened the boat.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, they used the same frames, everything, and just
wow.
spaced them closer.
Well, they were known for their attention to mass production techniques, right?
Right, and very clever.
Yes, yes. Getting a lot of boats out the door.
So this is a standard interior for Chris Craft.
Yeah, okay.
Hard rubber wheel by 1930, 5-instrument cluster. But just nice boats, and they sold quite a few of these.
Did they? Yeah, very popular.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now this is a Higgins, a 17-foot Higgins, built in 1947. Now, Higgins was well known for its building of the PT boats in the war, right?
I mean, that's, you know, Andrew Higgins ran a big company in Louisiana. They built all kinds of things, but he geared up during World War II to build the PT boats.
Right.
And I think
out of plywood, right? That was the primary
78
connection between the PT boats.
78 footers.
Yes.
And after the war, he had this big factory. He didn't know what to do with it, so he started building pleasure boats.
Out of plywood again,
basically out of the same material that he built the PTs out of.
Yeah, so he had that experience. He just brought the technology down from the larger boats to the smaller
boats.
Yeah.
And you know, I never thought much of them as a younger kid, but a local guy took me aside and said, "You should drive one of these."
Oh.
And he took me out, and by gosh, they are a fabulous boat.
Is that right?
Yeah, they're lightweight, so the horsepower that they have really makes them perform. They were picked up by Cypress Gardens. They were the water ski boat at Cypress Gardens for a number of years.
Okay.
Yeah, and you know, good good boats, really well designed, structurally sound. They had issues with some of the plywood in a couple of years, but the reality was it was a well-conceived and quite well-made boat.
Was it? Yeah. Yeah, we got
And they were all painted, and this one is very traditional.
Is it? Yeah. Yeah.
And they would have run the Chrysler Ace, which is 92 or 3 horsepower, or the bigger ones ran the Chrysler Crown, which is 115.
I see.
But the water ski groups ran them.
Nice. Now this is a Shepherd, 21 foot, built in 1952, and this is a Canadian boat building company, right?
These were built on the Great Lakes.
Yeah.
And Shepherd's, as you can see, it's quite a deep boat.
Yes.
Great big water boats. They're built in Canada. And then Jeffco Marine in Buffalo, New York was the national
big
importer.
distributor, right? Yeah, they really helped get them
and
the sales going in the U.S.
Yep. And the Fraunheim company still has the Jeffco name today.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, they're not importing the Shepherds anymore, but they're still around.
Now the styling, these were well known for their styling cues, right?
Yeah. Shepherds are particularly strongly made.
Are they?
The frames, some of the frames are 8 and 10 inches deep in the bottom.
Wow.
So they're very strong, very stout. They've held up very well over the years.
They're very well constructed.
Yeah. And they use all Robertson, which is the square drive screws. They're very Canadian.
Oh, okay. All right.
And they have a glass windshield, which a lot of people with a rounded windshield like that used a plexiglass, but Shepherd actually used glass.
Interesting.
And you don't want to break the glass because it's an expensive item to recreate.
Oh, I bet.
But this has the original dash panel, the right wheel.
The steering wheel there.
Yeah. I mean, you can see the 50s styling in the dash.
It's interesting, kind of rounded, very soft.
Yeah.
A bit of soft surfaces.
And plywood ceiling, what we call ceiling stock inside versus individual boards.
Well, Rebecca, you know, it's hard to believe, but we're out of time for recording the show today, and it's been a great show. A lot of very interesting boats to look at, a lot of interesting histories. Is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up today?
Well, certainly a big thank you to you, Paul. I really appreciate you coming and sharing what we love so dearly here at the Antique Boat Museum, our collection and our beautiful facility.
Yes.
So I'd encourage people watching your show to come and visit for themselves and check it out.
Yes.
We have additional information on our website, which is abm.org.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you, Smart Boating viewers, for watching this show. If you'd like to learn more, contact us at our website, www.smartboatingus.com. Thank you.